Dustin Poirier's retirement earlier this year closed the chapter on one of the most respected and entertaining careers in UFC history. The Louisiana native, known to fans as the Diamond, bowed out in fitting fashion, taking on Max Holloway in a high-stakes clash that delivered fireworks even if it didn't go his way on the scorecards. It was a reminder that, even in his mid-30s, Poirier still had the tools and toughness to hang with the very best. But despite that, he chose to walk away, citing a desire to enjoy life with his family and step into the next phase of his journey outside the cage. Since hanging up the gloves, Poirier has shifted gears into a slower, more fulfilling lifestyle. He's poured time into his family, philanthropic efforts, and entrepreneurial projects, including the hot sauce business that became a surprising hit with fans. Financial security is no longer a question for him, and unlike many fighters who retire with regrets or empty pockets, Poirier has built a legacy both inside and outside the octagon. That doesn't mean he's immune to the itch, though. When asked directly by a fan online whether he misses fighting, Poirier gave a simple, honest reply: "I'm good, of course I do." It's the kind of answer that reflects the duality many fighters face when they step away. The grind, the camps, and the pressure are things few miss, but the roar of the crowd, the thrill of competition, and the satisfaction of testing yourself against another elite athlete are hard to replicate anywhere else. What makes Poirier's situation unique is that he retires with no unfinished business. He's fought the best of his generation, collected highlight reel victories, and cemented himself as one of the most fan-friendly fighters in UFC history. From wars with Eddie Alvarez and Justin Gaethje to his iconic knockout of Conor McGregor, Poirier delivered moments that will live forever in the sport's memory. He never captured the undisputed championship, but he did earn an interim belt and the respect of fans and peers alike, something he often said meant just as much. Could he return? In MMA, retirements are rarely permanent, and given Poirier's honesty about missing the fight game, the possibility of one more walkout can't be dismissed. If he ever did come back, it would likely be for a legacy fight rather than a title chase, something that excites him, pays him well, and gives fans another chance to celebrate his career. Until then, though, Poirier seems content living a life beyond the cage, knowing he left everything inside it. What stands out most from his career is the consistency of his heart and his willingness to put on a show. Whether in victory or defeat, he carried himself with class, grit, and authenticity, qualities that made him one of the sport's most beloved figures. Even if he never throws another punch in the octagon, Dustin Poirier's mark on MMA is permanent. Khabib Nurmagomedov knows a thing or two about greatness, and ahead of UFC 320, he's given a ringing endorsement to his countryman Magomed Ankalaev. This weekend, Ankalaev defends his light heavyweight championship for the first time against Alex Pereira, the man he dethroned back in March. Their first meeting was a grueling 5-round chess match in which Ankalaev's wrestling and discipline carried the day, but the rematch is being billed as a much tougher test. Pereira is a proven knockout artist with the ability to end fights in an instant, and many fans believe he'll be coming in hungrier than ever to reclaim the belt. Still, Ankalaev isn't without his backers, and few names carry more weight in MMA than Khabib's. The former lightweight champion, who retired undefeated and is considered by many as one of the greatest fighters of all time, has been vocal in his admiration for Ankalaev's skill set and mindset. Speaking ahead of the fight, Khabib praised the champion's evolution and suggested that he already ranks among the very best fighters Russia has produced. In Khabib's eyes, Ankalaev's continued improvement and consistency make him a legitimate candidate to one day be regarded as the greatest Russian fighter ever. That's high praise considering the rich combat sports heritage of the region, and it sets the stage for Ankalaev to take another major step toward building his own legacy. At 22-1-1 with one no contest, the Dagestani powerhouse has already carved out an impressive resume, including wins over names like Alexander Rakic, Johnny Walker, and Thiago Santos. He's unbeaten in 14 straight outings, and while he hasn't yet entered the pound-for-pound GOAT conversation, continued success in the octagon could quickly change that narrative. Khabib's words also highlight something else: respect from peers who know how difficult it is to reach and stay at the top. Ankalaev may still be chasing his place in the sport's history books, but he's already earning the kind of recognition that suggests he's on the right path. If he can silence Pereira once again on Saturday night, the calls for his inclusion in the sport's elite conversations will only grow louder. For now, he has the chance to validate Khabib's faith in him, and to prove that he's not just another Russian contender, but a champion with the potential to define an era. Henry Cejudo has never been shy about giving blunt takes, and when it comes to the UFC's much-hyped White House event next summer, he's made it clear he thinks Jon Jones will get what he wants. Right now, the card is still months away from even being finalized, but the speculation has been relentless. Conor McGregor's name has been floated constantly, with Dana White openly acknowledging his interest in putting the Irish superstar on the bill. Jon Jones, on the other hand, is another matter entirely. He retired earlier this year, has a complicated history with the promotion, and has tested White's patience more than once with his legal troubles and unpredictable decision-making. Still, Jones has been vocal about wanting to compete on the card, and according to Cejudo, Dana will eventually relent. On the Pound for Pound podcast, Cejudo described White as someone who plays hardball, but ultimately recognizes the magnitude of certain moments. He admitted that Jones is a wild card and acknowledged that his history outside the cage makes him a risk, but in his view, the upside is too big to ignore. For Cejudo, the equation is simple. If you're trying to make the White House card historic, you want the biggest names possible. And Jon Jones remains one of the biggest stars the UFC has ever produced. Cejudo even painted the picture of the perfect main event, saying that Jones should face Tom Aspinall in a symbolic USA versus England showdown, likening it to a modern-day rematch of 1776. In his eyes, Jones not only deserves the spotlight, but would also deliver, predicting he would finish Aspinall inside the first few championship rounds. The idea highlights both the allure and the risk of putting Jones front and center. On one hand, Jones's star power is undeniable. Even after retirement, his name generates headlines in a way few fighters can. He's widely considered the most talented fighter to ever step foot in the octagon, and his presence on the card would guarantee mainstream attention. On the other hand, White has spent years managing the fallout of Jones's controversies, both legal and professional. Letting him headline such a politically symbolic and globally visible event could be seen as a gamble the UFC might not want to take. Cejudo, though, seems convinced that spectacle will win out. He sees Jones versus Aspinall as the kind of fight that elevates the White House event beyond novelty into something genuinely historic. A moment that fuses legacy, rivalry, and the spectacle the UFC thrives on. Whether Dana White sees it the same way remains to be seen, but the noise around Jones isn't dying down, and if the former champion keeps pushing for the slot, Cejudo may be right. Eventually, the UFC president could cave, if only because the upside is simply too great to pass up. Cory Sandhagen is heading into UFC 320 with the kind of mindset that shows he's not letting the pressure or the odds weigh him down. He knows Merab Dvalishvili is a daunting champion, a fighter who has rattled off 13 straight wins and beaten two of the men who last had Sandhagen's number, Jan and Umar Nurmagomedov. He also knows most of the betting public and pundits see him as the underdog, and instead of bristling against that narrative, he's decided to lean into it. Rather than fire back at critics directly, Sandhagen has created a series of tongue-in-cheek internet skits, playing both himself and the fan who lists off reasons why he can't possibly beat Merab. It's a quirky, self-deprecating approach that reflects his dry humor, something he admits doesn't always land because of his calm demeanor and lack of big facial expressions. But instead of trying to conform to a traditional trash talk model, he's letting his odd sense of humor breathe, and surprisingly, it's connecting with a lot of people. For him, it's more enjoyable to poke fun at the situation than to get dragged into endless online arguments with anonymous critics. What's clear from Sandhagen's comments is that while he doesn't ignore reality, Merab's resume is impressive and the odds are stacked, he isn't carrying bitterness. He's been chasing this matchup for a while, asking for it when others avoided the stylistic grind that comes with fighting someone like Dvalishvili. Now that it's here, he's relishing the chance to prove people wrong. Even with the noise surrounding him, he insists he rarely scrolls through comments, preferring to stay focused and protect his own mindset. When he does catch glimpses of negativity, he shrugs it off as the work of losers who wouldn't dare say those things face to face. At the same time, he makes it clear he doesn't lump all fans together. Sandhagen acknowledges that for every troll, there are just as many, if not more, supporters who genuinely ride for him, and he sees that balance as part of the sport. The passionate backing motivates him, even if he doesn't fully understand the phenomenon of fandom on a personal level. He describes it as strange, since he's never really idolized celebrities or elevated people above himself, but he appreciates how invested MMA followers are in his journey. With all that in mind, Sandhagen walks into Las Vegas knowing he's being doubted, but he's comfortable with that role. The skits and self-mockery aren't just entertainment for others, they're part of how he stays grounded. For him, this fight isn't just about chasing a belt, it's about embracing the narrative, flipping it on its head, and showing that the guy everyone counts out can still find a way to shine under the brightest lights. Scribe has added another big name to its Aviator ambassador roster, confirming that UFC featherweight contender Diego Lopes da Silva has signed a 12-month partnership with the brand. Aviator, already one of the most popular crash games worldwide with more than 60 million monthly players and 400,000 bets placed every minute across 5,500 online casinos, has been expanding aggressively into Brazil, and Lopes will now be front and center of that push. The Brazilian star is coming off a strong win over Jean Silver at UFC Fight Night 259, further solidifying his position as one of the division's top contenders and a fan favorite. By tying its brand to Lopes, Scribe is banking on both his surging momentum inside the cage and his rapidly growing popularity with fans in his home country, where Aviator has already seen a surge in growth. As part of the partnership, Lopes will lead a series of marketing campaigns designed to deepen Aviator's presence in Brazil while also connecting with international audiences through his UFC platform. The collaboration is a continuation of Scribe's broader strategy of aligning with high-profile MMA talent, which has already seen the company sign on fighters like Arman, Alex Pereira, Johnny Walker, and Merab Dvalishvili. Aviator's branding has also been visible inside the octagon itself, underlining how central the UFC partnership has become to Scribe's expansion plans. Scribe's chief commercial officer, Giorgi Tsutskiridze, praised the deal as a major win, noting Lopes's rapid rise toward title contention and his ability to energize fans. He highlighted the natural synergy between Aviator's fast-paced, high-stakes gameplay and the excitement of watching Lopes compete, suggesting that his involvement would resonate strongly with the brand's target audience. For Lopes, the partnership is as much about personal enthusiasm as business. Speaking on the announcement, he compared the thrill of Aviator to the intensity of stepping into the octagon. He described the game as fast-paced, action-packed, and social, drawing a parallel between timing a knockout punch and knowing the right moment to cash out in Aviator. Promising plenty of upcoming campaigns, Lopes framed the partnership as a way of giving his fans a new kind of entertainment experience, one that carries his energy and style beyond the UFC. With the partnership locked in, Aviator has not only secured another marquee ambassador, but also reinforced its strategy of blending combat sports culture with iGaming. For Brazilian fans especially, the collaboration ensures that Diego Lopes will be flying the Aviator flag both inside the cage and beyond, as his profile continues to grow on the global stage. Mackenzie Dern has thrown her support behind Alex Pereira ahead of his rematch with Magomed Ankalaev at UFC 320. The hashtag 5-ranked strawweight contender, who is closing in on a title opportunity of her own, believes that the former 2-division champion will bounce back from his UFC 313 loss and reclaim the UFC light heavyweight championship. Durn, fresh off consecutive wins over Amanda Ribas and Lupi Godinez, has been climbing the strawweight ranks with improved striking and her trademark submission game. Speaking on the high-stakes UFC 320 main event set for October 4 at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, the 32-year-old gave a confident prediction in favor of her fellow Brazilian. "I think Alex Pereira will win. I don't know if it was just that day at UFC 313 or what. I'm a fighter. Sometimes we know that person is so good, but we can see they're not on point or not on their day. I don't know what it was that day, if he just felt a little bit off, but I think he'll definitely come back stronger." Pereira, who lost his light heavyweight crown to Ankalaev in a surprisingly one-sided performance earlier this year, enters the rematch as a 15-8 underdog according to oddsmakers. Ankalaev, the reigning champion, is priced at 4-9 to retain his belt, with bookmakers suggesting that Pereira's best path to victory is via KO/TKO, while Ankalaev is more likely to succeed on the scorecards. Still, Durn isn't buying into the betting narrative. Like many of Pereira's fans, she views UFC 313 as an off night for Poatan and expects him to return sharper, hungrier, and ready to deliver another highlight reel performance. If Dern's prediction holds true, Pereira would improve his record to 13-3 and reclaim his status as one of the most feared fighters on the planet, setting the stage for another thrilling chapter in the UFC light heavyweight division. Jorge Masvidal hasn't exactly been out of the conversation, he's just been lurking on the fringes, popping up with bravado and old-school trash talk that reminds people why he once felt like the sport's most combustible personality. Once upon a few electric months, beating Darren Till, Ben Askren, and Nate Diaz in an instant, Masvidal was a mainstream star, the guy everyone wanted to watch because you never knew what he might say, do, or land. Time, a couple of losses to Kamaru Usman, and a fair share of off-cage controversy cooled that blaze, but it never fully died. The embers are still hot enough that when he talks about making a comeback, people pay attention. Now he's fired off another of those attention-grabbing calls, publicly challenging Leon Edwards and daring to do it on what would be the most bizarre stage imaginable, the UFC's planned White House card next summer. Masvidal's message is classic game-bred, raw, patriotic theater mixed with provocation. He framed the matchup like a symbolic rerun of old rivalries between nations, promising to whoop Edwards and send him back home, even naming July 4th as the perfect date to make the point. It's part showmanship, part personal vendetta, part publicity stunt, all the things that made him both bankable and combustible in his prime. But there's a long list of reasons why Masvidal's chest-thumping alone won't make this a reality. For starters, Leon Edwards is a legitimate top-tier welterweight whose choices about opponents are governed by rankings, title considerations, and the long calculus of career risk versus reward. Edwards may or may not be tempted by headline theatrics on a politically charged card. He's more likely to weigh the competitive upside. Then there's the UFC side. Dana White and the matchmakers have to balance storytelling with business sense, legal baggage, and the optics of putting a controversial figure back under a bright official spotlight. Masvidal himself has baggage, legal and public relations issues that have complicated his standing with fans and, at times, the company. So the promotion would have to decide whether the drama is worth the potential fallout. And beyond all that, there's the practical question of timing, fitness, and mutual interest.
Masvidal has to be in shape, the UFC has to want the bout, Edwards has to see merit in it, and the White House card, a once-in-a-generation spectacle, would have to clear a dozen other logistical and political hurdles before anyone could pencil in an emotional headline grudge match. Still, the fantasy of Masvidal versus Edwards on the White House lawn is irresistible for the kind of people who love spectacle and narrative. It tells itself. A scrappy, defiant veteran returning to reclaim a bit of legacy by taking down a reigning talent in front of an impossible crowd. That's the sort of storyline the UFC has historically both chased and manufactured. If Masvidal truly wants it, he'll need to make a credible case. Public trash talk helps punch the ticket, but what actually books fights is alignment, money, timing, marketability, and a partner willing to step in the cage. For Edwards, the upside is headline value and the potential to widen his profile. For Masvidal, it's a shot at relevance and redemption. For fans, it's theater, visceral, emotional, possibly historical, or a ridiculous mismatch and bad PR depending on how it's handled. At the moment, Masvidal's comments are mostly noise, loud, provocative, and perfect for social media virality. But that same noise can sometimes turn into reality if the stars align. Whether Masvidal will lace up and actually whoop Edwards on July 4th, or whether this will fade into another chapter of celebrity grandstanding, remains to be seen. Either way, the taunt has reignited conversation about his potential return, the kinds of fights the White House card might feature, and how much spectacle the UFC will lean into as it stages what could be one of the strangest, most talked about events in combat sports history.
Lerone Murphy isn't letting uncertainty rattle him. After Alexander Volkanovski hinted that his expected December featherweight title defense might not come together as planned, Murphy quickly reassured fans that he's ready to go whenever the UFC makes the call. The undefeated English contender has been riding high since his spectacular knockout of Aaron Pico, a win that elevated him into clear #1 contender status and put him directly on Volkanovski's radar. For weeks, December seemed like the target date, with both men expressing mutual interest in the matchup. But Volkanovski recently suggested there could be a delay, sparking speculation about whether it's tied to an injury, scheduling conflict, or the promotion considering alternative plans. The lack of clarity has led to concern among fans who feel Murphy has earned his title shot after a flawless UFC run and a series of increasingly dominant performances. Murphy, however, isn't showing any frustration. Responding on social media, he emphasized that Volkanovski hadn't declined the fight outright, only hinted at issues with timing. In his words, "He didn't say no to me. I think he is referring to the date. I will be ready whenever. Let's wait and see." It was a calm, measured response that highlighted his professionalism and willingness to adapt, while also keeping the pressure on the champion to follow through. Stylistically, the matchup is a fascinating one. Volkanovski's relentless pace, tactical intelligence, and championship experience make him one of the toughest puzzles in MMA. Murphy, on the other hand, brings sharp boxing, knockout power, and an undefeated record that reflects his ability to handle adversity and keep composure in big moments. Fans see it as a clash that could either solidify Volkanovski's dominance or signal the rise of a new force in the division. Regardless of when it happens, Murphy's attitude makes it clear he's not going anywhere. He's ready for December, January, or whenever the UFC decides to pull the trigger, and his steady confidence only adds to the anticipation for what could be one of the most intriguing featherweight title fights in recent memory.